morning, everyone, and welcome to the forum. It's a great pleasure to have you all here today at this very important conference that we at Columbia World Projects are very honored to co-sponsor with you. My name is Wafaa El-Sadr, and I'm the Executive Vice President for Columbia Global, and also I'm the Director of Columbia World Projects. And our goal at Columbia World Projects is to bring together researchers and practitioners across the world, to bring them together with the goal of trying to solve some of the most complex problems that we face as a global community. So as you are well aware, everyone in this room, the United States does suffer from facing a crisis in its infrastructure. And I think that's also been even more constrained by the issues related to climate and climate change. And I think in addition to this, obviously, that issues like, for example, racial inequity as well as economic inequity have also resulted in access and limitation of access to clean water and basic sanitation to millions of people in this country. However, I think thankfully, we are seeing now extraordinary leadership and commitment to making a difference and to trying to solve some of these countries' problems, infrastructure problems in particular. So I'm thrilled to be here to welcome you and to also note the amazing partnerships that have come together to put together this conference and to bring you all together to try to discuss some of the issues that we're facing together. I know that there are leaders from government, from the private sector, as well as from nonprofits, philanthropy, and academia who are here with us today. And I think it is sort of in the ethos of Columbia World Projects that we believe in partnerships, and we believe that partnerships, internal and external partnerships, are the only way to solve major problems and major challenges around the world. So I look forward, and we look forward to learning today together as we try to, discuss some of the solutions, replicating some of the solutions, and making a difference in the communities across the country. At CWP in particular, we've been very privileged to work with some of the world's experts at Columbia and outside in our Transforming Infrastructure in the US project with Professor Upmanu Lall and others here that are leading this project. And this includes trying to find new solutions to some of the issues around water and wastewater management in the United States, working with partners in Alabama and elsewhere around the country. You'll hear more about this effort throughout the day. I look forward to listening to the conversations and the presentations and learning more from all of you as we try to move forward together. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Alex Loucopoulos, who's a partner of Sciens Water, a leader in and also a leader in this space, and also a co-sponsor of this event, and who will provide you an introduction to the themes and the topics and the agenda for this conference. So welcome everyone, and welcome Alex.
Thank you, Dr. El-Sadr, and it's a real honor to be standing here today in this great university, brand new campus, brand new building, one of the most important weeks of many in the year, the Climate Week here in New York, in this great city. So many world leaders here today, so it's really great honor to be here in this particular place. It's also a tremendous privilege for me and the rest of our team here at Sciens Water to be around amazing scientists, academics, business leaders, politicians, executives, and some of the top leading experts in the United States to really kick off, as Dr. El-Sadr said, rethinking water and reshaping that. When, as a personal story, when we first sat down a couple years ago, started looking at water with Professor Lall, who'll speak in a second, who runs the Columbia Water Center, really didn't think that we would be able to bring together this and that the actual momentum for rethinking water and infrastructure would come to this point in such a short period of time. But I think the most exciting part of all this isn't really where we are today and what hopefully a lot of you will learn, but how much more we have to go, and that we're really, frankly, just getting started here. Many of you are new to the water space, new to Columbia, new to Science Water, new to this field, but it's exciting that we're literally just getting started here, and hopefully today will be a guide for many of you. And but I just wanted to thank Professor Lall and his leadership in helping guide us, certainly at this point, and hopefully for a long time. I'm also excited to kick off today's conference for several reasons, aside of the fact that we're here just getting started. I do feel that something very special is happening in the water space, as I think everyone in this room can feel today, that finally I think people are coming together in terms of rethinking it. There's certainly a new energy around water. There's new ideas that we'll hear about across the agenda today. There's new participants, many new faces. I think if you look around the room, this would have been a very different water conference than it was 6 years ago. And there's new paradigms for cooperation, as we'll see from on the policy side to the private side to the combination thereof. So today, I think we all are very excited about this topic called water. And I encourage everyone today to do a few things. Number one, to really understand the current reality. We can't hide behind the facts, and we're going to share with you some pretty interesting facts about water and the current reality, specifically in the US and certain parts of it. I want everyone to come away believing that the time is now to really begin to take action here, that the time is not in 5 years, not in 10 years, that we really need to take action now. I think people have been reading about it, have been thinking about it, have been feeling the pain, but really believe that the time is now. And lastly, that people will walk away understanding that there are solutions, or how, because for far too long, I think people in the water space have been either not believing, not understanding, and frankly, not understanding the how we're going to do it. So today we're going to we've put together some interesting panels about how with some of the top practitioners. So I think thanks to our 8 years of focus and dedication here at Science Water and our partnership with Columbia and many of our supporting sponsors that have really helped bring it today, that you'll read about, I think we've assembled an incredibly diverse and relevant group of individuals that are really help us understand, believe, and try to solve some of the water issues. So with that, I just want to quickly go through the agenda. I know we're running a little late, as you typically would be during UN Climate Week. If somebody can put the agenda on the screen. But before I do that, actually, we'll be doing Q&A in a new virtual format. If everyone can take their cell phones out and take the QR code and either scan the QR code or go into Slido and type in Rethinking Water. We'll be taking all the Q&As through this, and also for our participants on the Zoom, this is how we'll be doing it in this new virtual world. And also we have an interactive program right after lunch that hopefully we'll be using Slido and people will find interesting. But just take a minute, everyone, please do that and send in your questions to us through the Slido. So today's agenda, we really broke it down in a few different ways. We'll kick off why the opportunity is now shortly. We're going to be having a great panel from some of the key participants on the federal side about what's going on to help us understand the current reality. Then we'll move into some more talks about current realities from policymakers, the mayor from Mississippi, about some of the challenges that he faces and some of the others face in water, sort of the current reality. We'll take a short break. Then we're privileged that we have some of the top minds and CEOs from some of the largest water companies in the world here today. They will give us their perspective, which is extremely unique, as many of you know, in water. There aren't many of them, unfortunately, to date, but they're going to be giving us some really strong macro trends. Then we'll really focus on a key topic that I think will frame both the current reality, the belief that now is the time, and we'll begin to talk about some solutions using the Jackson, Mississippi example that's in everyone's mind right now. We'll be going through a case study through there. We'll be taking a short lunch break downstairs, and then we'll be doing our interactive programming, which I'll leave as a sort of a teaser for everybody. It's called the Science AQ test. And then in the afternoon, we're really focused on much more on solutions and what people are doing across technology, academia, and in the private sector to really wrap it up. And then we have a great keynote in the afternoon talking about the issues in the West. So that's the agenda today. So without further ado, I want to get into our first keynote of the morning, who's really truly a Renaissance man. Can't really say he's an industry practitioner, a successful businessman, a best-selling author, award-winning producer, lawyer, historian, the list goes on and on. But Seth Siegel, who's with us today, really embodies, I think, what is really needed in this sector, which is a well-researched mind, a keen ability to operate in an interdisciplinary fashion, and somebody who brings massive amounts of passion and impact to this space. So with that, my good friend, colleague, Mr. Seth Siegel, thank you.
Working? Is this working here? Hi. Yeah, there you go. Hi, everybody. Good morning. I don't like podiums, or podia. I think they're plurals. Good morning. I want to start by actually thanking Alex. It is true, we have become friends. And the friendship began in a way that I'd like to offer to each and every one of you here and everyone in the water world. I was long time ago, I was a lawyer. I hated every second of that. I started a business career totally unrelated to water. It was a very good business career, but when I was in my 40s, I had the enormous good fortune of one of the world's largest corporations coming and calling me and saying they wanted to buy my company. And what I wanted to do then was to spend the rest of my life working in public policy areas. And that allowed me to devolve into a focus on water, which has been a great passion of mine for basically my entire adult life, as I'm sure for most or all of you. At first, I didn't know exactly what this would bring, what it would mean, how I would do it. One thing led to another. I started reading about a couple of areas. I began getting concerned about a few areas. And then I ended up writing a book. It was a complete and total Cinderella story, a book that I thought, my publisher thought would sell a couple of hundred copies, ended up becoming an international bestseller. It's now out in 24 languages, and it's now, in July, had its 12th printing here in the United States. But the relationship with Sciens and with Alex begins about just before COVID. I get a phone call from him, didn't know who he was, couldn't spell his last name. And I'm not sure he can spell his last name, but he acknowledges that he can't. And he says, hi. He says, you don't know me. I've just finished reading your books, and I'm wondering, can you stop by the office and say hello? And the answer is yes. And the answer to all of you is yes. My passion, my life now is totally tied around water and water issues in a very broad spectrum of that. I'll talk about specifically what I'm doing these last few weeks and years in a few moments. But I do want to say that this is part of a larger conversation, and I love the idea of playing a role of connector, of saying so-and-so should know so-and-so. I'm completely not-for-profit in my orientation of this. I'm not looking to become a consultant to any or all of you. I'm looking only to see if we can help solve some of the really grievous water problems we have around the world today. In furtherance of that, and a further thank you to Sciens, is that they're providing for, I believe, all the attendees of this conference copies. I have 3 books, but 2 of them are on water, and they are providing for all the attendees at today's conference free copies of my 2 books. They're somewhere out there, and it's not on the agenda, but during the coffee break and the early part of lunch, I'll be signing books if anybody wants them personalized. Every so often it happens, somebody will say to me, please don't personalize it to me because I'm putting your book on eBay. So you think I'm kidding, but I am not. I'm really not. So think, oh, good, this is an economic opportunity for you. That's great. Okay, so how do I advance it? What do I do? Okay, so I'd like to. So Alex asked me to speak more generally and more of a 40,000-foot view approach for the opening here, rather than there's gonna be a lot of details today, and to not dig into too many details. But I have many passions. There's a lot of ways we could talk about water. We could talk about water infrastructure. We could be talking about cybersecurity, which is a very big concern of mine. I think we are really unprepared for what's going to be, I think, a very big and bad cyber attack on our water systems. Just for a second to think about this, we don't need to have every water utility taken down. You need to have 3 taken down to set off a national panic. There's not enough bottled water in any of the FEMA facilities to cover all the people who will be fearful about drinking their tap water. This is not the plot of a Clancy novel, but it's something that we could all imagine from the very scary world we live in today. Finance, how we finance our water systems. There's lots of things we could be talking about. Worker retention at utilities, how we educate. We're at Columbia University with my dear friend Upmanu Lall. How do we bring in the next generation of wonderful grad students and practitioners in the world of water? Lots of things to talk about. Some of them will be talked about today. I actually hope, I've said to Alex, that we turn this Sciens meeting into an annual kind of water Davos, and that we expand this from the 400 or 500 people who registered today to, in 3 years, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 people. And I think we can do that. Word of mouth, share all that. But I want to talk today about, in the short time that I have, and also open it if there's questions from anybody to share any part of what I'm talking about today, process or the 2 things I'm going to talk about. I want to talk about 2 specific areas. And the reason I'm raising these 2 is that after lots of years of reading and thinking and doing thousands of interviews with people around the world in water, I've come to conclude that if we could fix just 2 things here in the United States, we could really change America's water profile completely. One involving water quality, and the other one involving water quantity or water scarcity. And I know you'll be hearing from a smart speaker from the Bureau of Reclamation later today, and from other places. So just think of this as sort of like a hint or a feint into the topic, and not intending to be comprehensive addressing the issue. Okay, first of all, drinking water quality. Lots of ways of talking about fixing water quality. But there's one in particular that I think is the right way to do it. Now, some of you may already know the answer to this. I know David Stanton is here, and I know he does know the answer. So, David, you're not allowed to participate in this. But what would you say? I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but can I put you on the spot? No, not you. Okay, you don't want to be. Who's an outgoing personality who likes to be put on the spot? Who's that? Anybody in the water? Does that apply to any engineer you've ever met? Okay. You'd like to be put on the spot. Okay. How many would you say in a country of 320 million Americans, but 50 states, what would you say would be a rational number? And if you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. What would you say would be a rational number of drinking water utilities? Now, again, some of you may already know the answer, but I'll tell you, before COVID happened, I do a huge amount of public speaking. I was on the road doing 2-3 speeches a week, and I played this parlor game with audiences about this size pretty regularly. And I would say, what would you say in a country of 50 states, 320 million Americans? What would you say? You see the way I segue, because nobody wants to volunteer? But usually when you speak to college audiences, they love to volunteer. Okay, so I would say, what would you say is the logical number? 50 states. So the bidding usually would start at 35. Then they'd go to 45, and I'd say, no, it's a little bit higher. And then they'd go to, like 65, and then go to 100, and never once in, call it 150 speeches, never once did it go above 320. Never once. But the real number is, we have 51,535 drinking water utilities in the United States. Now, we also have about 100,000 specialty water areas like campgrounds, churches, universities, and so forth that have their own independent water systems. Now, this was based on an American Water Works Association report. It's a couple years old. There's been some consolidation that's gone on. So maybe the number is now down to 51,235. But what is the problem with 51,535? We are a democratic country. We are an independent country. We like to be independent people. Who was the American hero? The cowboy, free-ranging, right, on he and his horse, or she and her, was there ever she? Yeah, I guess so. She and her horse out there on the range doing their own independent thing. Everybody in America wants to be the boss, wants to have their say. So what's so terrible about having 51,535 independent drinking water utilities? And I'll tell you what the problem is. Problem is you can't get done what you have to get done. You can't fix infrastructure. You can't attract the right number of people. You can't pay for the software that you need. You can't do the fixes to the cybersecurity you need to do. I was thinking of writing a book about cybersecurity. It's too narrow of a topic, and after about 10 months, I dropped it. But I learned a lot. And I interviewed some of the, not like New York City, Boston, San Francisco, but just right underneath that. I don't want to embarrass any city in case you know anybody in any cities, but cities of like significant numbers of people. And you know who heads the cybersecurity there? The answer is usually nobody. Or if it's somebody who's got other tasks, or it's somebody who's not specially trained for it. And even if they are specially trained for it, and by the way, I didn't meet a single person that was specially trained for it, but even if they are specially trained for it, what do they do with the information? Once every 3 years, their state water administrator comes to them with a clipboard and asks them, do you do the following things? There's no interface with the community next door. There's no interface with the 20,000 smaller utilities in their state. There's no interface with the federal government unless there is a crisis. So first of all, we can't even get ourselves focused on what will be an over-the-horizon, but almost certain to happen, crisis that's coming. We can't find the staff. We can't retain the staff. We can't train the staff. We can't do all of the things we need to do when we have 51,535 utilities. And so the Siegel plan for saving water in America, improving drinking water quality, is to figure out a way through carrots and sticks to consolidate ourselves down to a rational number. Now, how do you do that? Last year, or 2 years ago, there were 80,000 violations of the Safe Drinking Water Act. There are hundreds of those violators who have been violators for 3 or more years. There are over 100 who have been violators for 10 or more years. And each and every time, they either get a small fine, which is easier than fixing the problem, or they get no fine at all because they say they're taking corrective measures. And because of the fact that you have 51,535 utilities, which means that you have 51,535 political entities that overlay that, no mayor, no governor, for governors even at the big stage, no mayor at the little stage is going to want to start getting at war with some local official, even though the health and safety of their populations are at risk. We talk about it when it's Jackson. We talk about it when it's Flint. And even then, by the way, we talk the wrong conversation. Flint and Jackson immediately morphed into a race relations question. It's that too. But it isn't only that. And what we should have been talking about is how did we devolve into the situation that it is what it is? And the answer is because we have a terrible system for figuring out how to create scale and mass is what America generally does very well in its industrial complex. So that's my number one issue is how do we fix this problem? We fix this problem by saying to those 80,000 violators of the Safe Drinking Water Act, you have a choice. Either you pay a real fine or you don't pay a fine, but within 3 years you consolidate. And you keep the consolidation process going, and you keep breaking them down and breaking them down and breaking them down until you get yourself to a scale and a size that you have people of, you have utilities of large enough scale and size, private, public, not-for-profit, I don't care. But what I do care about is get this out of the hands of mayors and others who are incentivized to suppress the real price of water, to get away from market pricing of water. Of course, poor people should be subsidized, there's no question about that. But once you get into the situation where a mayor says a water rate increase is akin to a tax increase, they are never going to do it, and they're going to let their infrastructure rot. They're going to under-hire. They're going to underpay. And that is why we have this problem. Okay, so that's number one. Obviously, I have a lot more to say about it. In fact, I wrote a book about it called Troubled Water. You can get a copy over there. Okay. Problem number two, water scarcity. Am I okay on time, Alex? Still good, yeah? Good? We're good, okay, fine. Okay, problem number two, scarcity. Okay, there's many causes for the water problem. Scarcity, I don't want to oversimplify it. I wrote a book about this too. Get over there. Okay, so water scarcity. So what is the number one fix we can do in the United States and frankly around the world to fix our water scarcity problem? And there are many, and again, I don't mean to oversimplify. But the problem we have is that about 5,000 years ago, a really smart water engineer, don't know his name, lost to history, figured out that if you build canals off of the Nile River, and if you build canals off of the Tigris and Euphrates River, and you flood your field, and then you flood it again, and then you flood it again, and you flood it again, you're going to have a pretty good harvest. 5,000 years ago. Not a big export industry then, not a lot of people around the world then, enough food to build giant empires. The Egyptian Empire, the Mesopotamian Empire. It was a good agricultural system. Now, what other industry can we think of that for 5,000 years hasn't taken a step forward? So you may think, as I thought, frankly, when I started looking into this, that flood irrigation is only done in the most backward of backward places. That doesn't just go on anymore. But you know what the true number is? 85%, these are UN statistics, 85% of the 800 million irrigated acres in the world today, 85% are flood irrigated. Well, of course, you're saying that's only in backward countries, though, right? 39% of the irrigated fields in the United States are flood irrigated. Anybody here from Arizona, by chance? Anybody here from Arizona? No? I'm going to tell you a number that's going to make you call up Arizona this afternoon and say, what the hell are you thinking? Arizona, summer temperatures, 120 degrees. Sandy soil, desert soil, doesn't hold water very well, right? 89% of the irrigated fields are flood irrigated in Arizona. So we have a problem. Anybody read about the problem along the Colorado River? Anybody read about that? Yeah? You read about it? Okay, this is the problem on the Colorado River. This is not a water main break. This is a citrus field in Yuma, Arizona, that uses 14 acre feet. I think it's 326,000 gallons per acre foot. Is that right, David? Is that right, about right? Yeah. So 326,000 times 14.5 acre feet per year, per acre, at 120 degree temperature in Yuma, Arizona. This is the culprit. And if we could stop flood irrigating the 837,000 acres in Arizona and the 6 million acres along the Colorado River Basin, even just half of them, you would have 100% of all the cuts that the federal government is looking to have to save Lake Mead. In fact, you'd have more than you need. So just think about that. Now, by the way, technology to the rescue. And here is where I've been spending my last year or two of my life very passionately. There's a company out of Israel. Israel's very good about water technology. There's a company out of Israel called NDRIP, New Drip, which developed a system. Why isn't everybody just using pressurized drip irrigation? It's expensive to install. You need to purify the water so that it's like municipal water, clean, because it clogs very easily. And then you need a lot of energy to propel the water across the field. But if you think about this, if there could possibly be another approach, maybe we could save the world. So a scientist in Israel, a guy named Uri Sheni, a very respected soil physicist, came up with this system that said, what if we use the gravitational slope of a flood-irrigated field, added no other infrastructure, and just using the force of gravity? We talk about renewable energy. Sometimes it's not sunny, sometimes it's not windy. Gravity is always on. 24/7, gravity is on. The ball never doesn't fall. And so therefore, using gravity, we can drip irrigate fields at great sizes and great lengths in Arizona, in the Colorado River Basin, and all over the world. And that's what the company is doing now. It's in 20 countries now. I have an involvement with them. I recently became the chief sustainability officer at the company as a way of being the chief evangelist, because this is a technology that I believe will save the world. And yes, full disclosure, there is an economic interest, but that's not my motivation. My motivation is this is the technology that I think is going to change everything. Commodity crops, corn, wheat, rice, potatoes, cotton, sugar beets, and so forth, cannot afford the cost of a pressurized drip. They can't afford thousands of dollars an acre of installation. What they can afford is the couple $100 of installation for this that lasts and saves water for society, gives them a better water future, increases their yield by 1/3, cuts their fertilizer use by half, and cuts carbon emissions by up to 80%. I believe that technology will be a solution, and there are some really great steps forward in Arizona with the Arizona state government, the Arizona utilities, and others in the Southwest, and I think we'll be hearing more about this in the coming years. So let's consolidate, let's use technology to fix our flood irrigated fields, and we'll have a much better science water conference just next year. I'll stop there. If there's any time, I'll be glad to take a question. If not, I'll be glad to, I have one more. I had said to you, I'm always glad to talk to you, and so if anybody's interested, you can contact me through my website. You can contact me through my email. You can contact me through Twitter. If anybody wants my phone, you can have my phone number. And glad to have the conversation. Alex, tell me how we are on time. Should I stop now, or we have I will be available outside, but if anybody, we have time for one question. Anybody? Okay. Yes. Tell me your name. Don. Does control the soil? No, actually, it's better for the drip technology. It's actually better for the soil. When you flood, you have very bad problems of soil degradation, soil erosion, soil degradation. The other problem about flood irrigation is you have to over-fertilize because the plant needs a certain amount of fertilizer to get the job done. And so therefore, if a farmer under-fertilizes, he or she will lose part of the harvest. So the farmer is given an incentive to use more fertilizer than actually is needed, generally significantly more. With this technology, you actually use half or less of the fertilizer because it's put into the dripper system. You liquefy the fertilizer. The effect, by the way, anybody here, I didn't talk about one of the problems, is algal blooms. Anybody on the Great Lakes area? I think Carl Gantner is here. So you have people who are worried about algal blooms. Where does the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico come from? It comes from the Mississippi River Delta over-fertilization. All those nitrates flow in. They flow out into the Mississippi, out of the Mississippi, and they flow into the Gulf of Mexico. That dead zone, the size of the state of Texas, apoxic, no fish, no plants, no life. That's because of the fact that for a long time we have been over-fertilizing. So Don, it is, right? So Don, to your question, what does this do to the soil? It makes the soil better, healthier, lasting longer. But even more importantly, it leads to the fact that there's basically 100% uptake of the fertilizer into the plant, which means that there's no runoff, and there's no groundwater degradation, there's no surface water degradation, which means that there won't be algal blooms, and there isn't the epoxic consequences. Okay, delighted to speak more today, later today, tomorrow. I'm around for most of the day, but leaving for another destination this afternoon. So if you can get me this morning, fabulous. If not, be in touch. And if not, I'll see you next year, I hope, at this very same auditorium. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.